You're listening to STRUTCAST, a weekly podcast dedicated to everything spring turkey hunting. All right, welcome to STRUTCAST. This is episode 7, and we are about 2 days away from the Louisiana youth opener. We're 2 weeks into Mississippi and Alabama. South Texas zone is open, and we're really getting into the middle of the season. And today, on this episode, we were supposed to have Travis T-Bone Turner from Bone Collector, and he is busy this week, and we're hoping maybe we can do that one next week if he has the time. So I got Jordan with me. What's up, Jordan?
What's up, buddy?
Jordan is going to kind of sit in more as a co-host than just a guest. I know y'all have heard Jordan on a couple, 2 or 3 episodes so far, and Jordan is in Louisiana, so we're going to talk a little bit about that and with his son and with youth coming up. And also, Jordan spent the weekend in Texas with some of the Buck Commander guys on a hunt, and we're really going to focus a lot on Texas on this episode. We're going to bring my partner and buddy, Bruce Saale from T3 Custom Calls. He's going to jump on for a little while, and he's lived in Texas for a long time. He's got a lot of experience hunting the state of Texas all over. And so we're going to do a lot of Texas, but start off just by reminding you that you can follow us on strutcast.com. Instagram is STRUTCAST, and Facebook is The STRUTCAST. And like we've been saying, we want you guys to interact. We really appreciate all the listeners and all the followers, and we want to hear from you. We want to hear more about the kind of stuff that you want to hear out of this podcast. We want you to share pictures and stories and videos so we can put them up on our pages and kind of make this a community for everyone like we've been saying. So make sure to reach out to us. We really love to hear from you and kind of help us with planning out what we're going to do on here and kind of make this a good thing for everyone. We're going to really start branching out here now that the seasons are opening across the country. We're going to start doing more in the Midwest and out west, and as today we're going to talk a lot about Texas. So remind you again, if you're in the market for some new turkey gear, STRUTCAST at checkout at screegear.com will get you a 10% discount, and you can check them out, screegear.com. You can find them on all the social media sites. If you follow me, you can see a lot of my videos and pictures using scree in the spring woods, and lifetime guarantee, sizing guarantee, STRUTCAST at checkout for 10%. So, Jordan, I know that you got a place in Louisiana. What are you thinking about this weekend?
Man, we got youth weekend coming up. I'm really excited about it. I always try to take my son out every year for youth weekend. I don't get to hunt Louisiana as much as I'd like because I'm usually traveling quite a bit, but this year it looks like I'm going to get to do a lot in Louisiana. So that's really awesome. And tell you what, I got a lot of gobblers this year, which I was fired up about because last year I really didn't even see any jakes. Had 2 gobblers that were pretty regular on the property that I hunt, and really, like I said earlier, I didn't get to hunt it a lot. I went opening weekend last year with my son. They were on fire. Called both those gobblers up. They came running in from around the corner. Couldn't quite get the shot right for my son, so let them walk. And then I really didn't hunt them the rest of the year. So happens to be one of them I call Rio because he looks like a Rio bird, and he's a full-blooded Eastern, but he's got kind of that blondish feathering on his tail fan. So I call him Rio, and I saw him on trail camera today, and they as of last week they were still grouped up pretty good. As far as gobblers with gobblers and hens with hens. But I noticed like towards the end of the week, I was seeing, one coming by himself, kind of looking around, and I was seeing a lot of strutting and whatnot. So looking pretty good.
Well, it's funny you mentioned the Rio thing, and I'm sitting in my office, and I've got turkey fans and different mounts, all in here. And it's funny that you mentioned that because I've got 2 fans, and I have them on purpose. They're on the wall next to a Rio fan mount, and they were both killed in Natchez, Mississippi, and they both match the Rio. coloring
Isn't that
wise.
funny?
And another thing that I just noticed this the other day, and I've been meaning to take a picture and post it on our social media because, so I've got, you know what an Indian rug mount is?
Yeah.
So I've got an Indian rug mount of a turkey that I killed on the Mississippi River swamp in Natchez, outside of Natchez, just a little south of Natchez actually, and he had such pretty coloring. He was a real dark turkey and real pretty, and he was an old turkey, and there was a lot of story behind him, you know. So I did the rug mount on him, and I've never noticed until a few weeks ago I did the episode with Scott Ellis, and we talked a lot about Osceolas, and we talked a lot about this whole conversation right here with the Rios and the Easterns and how you see these variants, anomalies of colors, you know, and why that's happening, and just, you know, just conversation. But we talked about how there's been Florida Osceola turkeys released in the South during restocking programs, and to my knowledge, there's not any data that shows any great population of them actually taking, but inevitably, those genetics are getting into the gene pool, at least at some percentage. So this turkey I've got Indian rug mounted. I've only killed one Osceola in my life, and I was looking at pictures of him today. And this turkey I killed in Mississippi looks, his wings, he looks like an Osceola. I mean, he has almost no complete white barring. It's
That's cool.
What white barring he has on his, he has some. Not, you know, he's not as dark as a Everglades, South Florida, you know, type Osceola, but he doesn't have any white barring that's solid all the way through. It's all broken. And I was looking at the pictures of Bruce and I when we killed our Osceolas. I guess it's been a while, 12 years, 10 years ago, 8 years ago, something like that. And his was real dark, but mine is actually more white than this Mississippi swamp bird that's hanging on the wall. And my conversation with Scott actually got me paying attention to this bird because it's hanging right here in front of me where I'm sitting. And so it's kind of cool, you know? I mean, people go and pay tons of money, and I'm not saying this is an Osceola, but people do pay a lot of money and put forth a ton of effort to go kill a dark black-winged Osceola. And I could bring you in this office and tell you that was my Osceola, and you wouldn't even blink. Like, you wouldn't even question it one bit. And then again, I've got a Rio back here that I killed on video. You can find the video on my Vimeo channel, and you'll know him because he's missing his middle feather. He's got a gap right in the dead center of his fan. And big, beautiful caramel blonde Rio. And I've got two Easterns hanging right beside him on the wall, and they are the exact same color. So,
wow.
And I killed those two back-to-back on back-to-back days, probably 15 years ago, 12, 15 years ago. So it is interesting how these birds, the lines are being blurred between the subdivisions or subsects.
Yeah, that's amazing. One time, and one of the things that I always appreciated about Mikey is that you know, he guides all over the country and he kills a lot of turkeys himself. But if he witnesses it die, calls it in, or kills it himself, he usually keeps one feather that's unique out of all the rest of the feathers off the bird. He doesn't keep anything else. He'll just pick one feather and the meat, of course. But anyway, he'll keep one feather that's unique. And one year at E3 in Kansas, he went ahead and punched both Kansas tags because he had two cinnamon phase gobblers come in. Wow. And I don't know. Have you ever seen a cinnamon phase one?
I don't know that I've ever seen one in person. I've seen pictures of them, and I've obviously read and seen a lot of things about people wanting to kill one. I don't think I've ever seen one in person.
Which I should take that back. He didn't kill them because they were cinnamon phase. He didn't realize they were cinnamon phase till he got to them. So he, tagged out, gets up there, looks at his birds. Their wings are all cinnamon. And it was just mainly their wings, but man, they were beautiful. And that's kind of what I appreciate about turkeys is that each one of them's different. They got some kind of coloring that's different than the rest of them. I've got fans. They've got some white barring on them, just in places, and some other fans that have some just discoloration. And anyway, that's just something that I've always appreciated. And like I said, that bird that I call Rio this year, I would be tickled to death with him just because he's different.
Yeah, well, birds in general, not just turkeys, but birds in general. I'm not saying this as a biologist. I obviously have no idea. I'm not a biologist, but it seems my observation logically tells me that birds in general tend to have more genetic anomalies with things like coloration than mammals. Anyway, I mean, you can see wide variations in the coloring on all kind of birds: ducks, songbirds, turkeys, everything. So it stands to reason that wild turkeys are the same way. Speaking of the cinnamon phase, I killed a bird. This has been a long time ago, like 99 or 2000. And it was one of the few times my dad actually went turkey hunting with me. He just doesn't turkey hunt. He went this year with my son on youth weekend. He went with us one day, but he went actually to shoot, and I ended up shooting the bird. But we called up a whole flock of turkeys. And when I say a whole flock of turkeys, it was like 27 of them.
Wow.
It was like, I don't know, don't make me lie, but 15 plus hens, like a couple of 2-year-olds, one really big boss turkey, and a handful of jakes, and it totaled 27, whatever the numbers were.
Wow.
And one of the hens was absolutely crazy. Like, it looked like, I remember my dad, I tell that story that my dad was with me because I remember his, the way he described it, the turkey's wings looked like the gold wing motorcycle emblem. They were so golden.
Man, that's pretty.
And the turkey herself was really spackled white. Like, she almost looked like, when you go to the cemetery or a city park and you these crazy ducks that are like, they look like they're about 5 different types of ducks mixed in one.
Mm-hmm.
She looked like that. I mean, she looked like a cross between 2 or 3 different subspecies of wild turkey and a white barnyard turkey. And she was like white and dark speckled, but with these really cinnamon phase colored wings. And I guess that's as close as I've ever gotten to see a cinnamon phase turkey in the wild. I've seen some pictures of them, and they look Photoshopped. They're so unique.
That's awesome.
So, anyway, back to Louisiana. I've been hunting with my son, and the Mississippi Youth Weekend was several weeks ago now, and we hunted again one day this week, and I've got some property here in Louisiana right down the road from my house, and I heard a bird last week. Oh, no, it wasn't. It was the Friday we went to Alabama. Was that last week? Week and a half ago. I heard a bird from my house, which was not on my property, but in that direction. So I'm hopeful. I haven't been running any cameras, but I rode around back there one day a week ago, and there was some tracks in the road. And so I'm going to go listen the next couple mornings, and hopefully I can find a bird gobbling.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
I want to take advantage of the youth weekend in Louisiana and let my Mississippi properties rest this weekend if I can.
That's right.
Because I'm going to South Dakota in 2 weeks. April, the first weekend, the opener for South Dakota, April 5th weekend, I guess it is. 2 weeks from this, a week
That's
from
awesome.
This weekend. So, but anyway, we're going to talk a lot about Texas because that's a big turkey state. It's a big state in general, and from my understanding, there's a lot of diversity. I know the primary thing that people think of is the mesquite and the, I guess, desert type of terrain and the Rios and the big flocks of Rios, but there's a south zone and a north zone, and you've been hunting the south zone, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the north zone opens the 1st of April, I think, and goes to the middle of May.
That's right.
So the south zone is what do you know the geography of that? Like, how does that work? Like, where's the line?
It's like, I could be wrong here. I want to say it's like everything south of I-10 minus some counties,
Yeah.
Pretty much, give or take. It's pretty much everything south of I-10.
Well, one thing we're going to do, and I'm going to bring him in here, and my buddy Bruce, I mentioned from T3, he's going to jump on. Bruce lived in Texas for, I don't know, we'll ask him when he gets on here, but he lived in Texas for a while, and he's turkey hunted Texas for many, many years. So we're going to bring him in, and we're going to talk a little Texas turkey hunting with him. Bruce, you there?
Yes.
All right. So this is Bruce Saale, and Bruce is the owner of T3 Custom Calls. And again, that's a company that I'm involved with, and I'm sure you've seen some of their stuff on our website and stuff like that. But Bruce, how long did you live in Texas?
I lived there about 7 years.
Okay. Well, Bruce and I, through T3 and otherwise, we've been going over to a private piece of property in Texas the last 4 years, which is my only Texas experience. But you've been hunting Texas a long time. Huh?
Yep. Texas is fun. Great turkey hunting.
Well, me and Jordan were just talking before we brought you on. Do you know where's the line between the South and the North Zone?
Man, I think it's 10, and then I'm pretty sure it's 10. I have to double check on that though.
Well, Jordan hunted the South Zone twice already this year. We were trying to figure out, it's open, and the North Zone opens the 1st of April, right?
Brush country down there, Jordan.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Jordan has experienced about what we did the few years that we went early in the season. You know, hard-headed.
End up.
Yeah, them daggum Rios were acting like Alabama Easterns.
Yeah, people think Rios are easy bird to kill, but I'm gonna tell you they can be tough, man. They don't have I don't think they have the pressure we have like on Easterns, but there's a lot of them. A lot of gobblers and a lot of hens. And they can be tough.
I think the stereotype gets skewed a little bit because a lot of people that go to Texas are going to outfitters and these big ranches where, like you said, the pressure's low and the numbers are managed, and there's a lot of turkeys and there's a lot of action, and it translates into a higher success ratio. But in my experience, that doesn't always. I mean, they are a little bit different. I mean, I don't know if you call them stupid, but they act a little bit different, and that, I guess, compared to an Eastern, it makes it feel like, because they gobble and they respond so much, it makes it feel like you're hunting a dumber bird, an easier bird, but getting them in gun range is not always necessarily easier.
No.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of them, and if you ever been out there, some of these places have roosts that's been there for hundreds of years, and you can literally go out there and there's like 6 inches of turkey crap underneath these trees. They've been roosting there for hundreds of years, and just thousands and thousands of birds. And when they start gobbling, it's like domino effect. It starts on one end, it might go 200 or 300, 400 acres, deep. Just turkeys gobbling. It's unreal.
I think the thing about it for me, the first couple of years going out there, it felt, because you're in turkeys, it feels different. And I guess with Easterns, Scott Ellis put it this way. He was talking about Osceolas, but he said, that Osceola is an opportunistic rooster. As far as roosting, I say rooster, I don't mean like the bird,
right.
But, they roost in an opportunistic way. In other words, the landscape they live in, they'll roost anywhere. And in Texas, at least to start your hunt out, if you're doing a little scouting, you're spending time out there, it's not hard to be on birds. But I do think the gap narrows a lot when you get to start you got a big flock of birds, and you're not just you're trying to keep the attention of one bird and get him in gun range, and that is challenging in and of itself.
Right. I find that a Rio, when they fly down, you might have 100 birds right there in that group, and then they disperse. And when they disperse, I'm talking about they might walk 5 miles that day before they come back. And they disperse. I mean, within an hour, they gone from that roost, every direction. So you got to get in their way, figure out where they're going.
Is that what you're experiencing in South Texas, Jordan?
Yeah, I mean, and like he said, once they make up their mind where they're going, and they're going quick too. I've noticed just if you try to hunt areas, catch them on the way to roost. I mean, a lot of times they're going up later than what you would think they would. I mean, last light they're going up and they're moving at a quick pace to get up in the tree. But yeah, I mean, for me, the last couple of weeks, I've been down there two weekends, I guess. I've gone down and went for youth weekend, and I went with some friends this last weekend. And about Tuesday, when we left to come home Tuesday, it was starting to get good, like just starting to they were breaking off and coming to calls and responding and stuff like that.
Last year, Bruce and I and some other friends of ours, we went out to the place in West Texas. It's in the North Zone, but it's way out west. And the first afternoon we were there, as a testament to what you just said, we got there in the middle of the afternoon and made an afternoon hunt. And we got in an area where we knew there was some, we weren't on the roost, but we were, in the area, within a couple hundred yards of some areas we knew they were roosting. And, we're just kind of messing around, trying to hear a turkey. And, I'm just kind of locating, yelping, and a turkey gobbles, and that bird is 500 yards. I mean, he's far enough that, just could hear him good and clearly, but just at the furthest distance where you could just really, still hear him clearly, hear his whole gobble clearly. And so we stood there a minute, and after a minute, he gobbled again, and he was closer. And I'm like, okay, well, he's coming this way. Maybe he's going to come try to roost over this way. We're just going to set up. So we kind of got in his way, the direction we felt like he was coming. And we sat up, and we started calling, and he gobbled just like Rios do. He gobbled every breath, every call I made, every sound I made. It was crazy. It was a dead still afternoon. You could hear. He started gobbling way out there, and he came all the way by us. And I swear, based off just the sound, because we never could see him, he came by us gobbling, and I heard him behind us. He came all the way past us and went all the way behind us another 300 or 400 yards before I got to where he got to wherever I guess he was roosting, and he never stopped. There's no way he stopped walking. It was like somebody was on a steady jog with a gobble tube, gobbling every 3 seconds. Yep. And he came within 50 yards of us, just the mesquite brush, we couldn't see him, and he just never checked up. I mean, gobbling at every call I made, and I couldn't get him to get 30 yards off of his path and come by us. So it's crazy. It's maddening because you think he's coming at you gobbling like that, and you think, well, just get ready, knock your safety off because it's fixing to happen, And the next thing you know, he gobbles and he's directly to your left, and then 10 seconds later he gobbles and he's 50 yards behind you, and then 10 more seconds he gobbles and he's 100 yards behind you. And it's just like he never stopped, just disappeared out of our life. Just as fast as we heard him and got set down, he was gone.
Yep, I've had it happen.
Yeah, they go up to roost late too. You'll find that too. It'll be dark when they fly up. I've actually seen them running, like from 200 or 300 yards out, that dead run to get to their tree, and then fly up. It's crazy.
You think it's because of the height they're roosting and just down here they're roosting in big tall trees they don't even go up to the top of, and out there they're roosting up in the very tip top of these little small 20-30 foot trees. I wonder if I don't know. I'm just theorizing if that's why they roost so late.
Eastern are roost on a branch. These turkeys are roost on the top of like a live oak, at the very top, tip top. They're on top of the tree, not in the tree. That's what's crazy. And down South Texas, they roost on light poles and power lines and all kinds of stuff. There ain't too many trees.
They can get on.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
right.
I remember my first trip out to Texas. The first afternoon we went out and roosted. We were standing on kind of a hill where we could see out across this kind of low, I guess, water drainage, call it a valley, I guess. But it was one of the only places out there where you could kind of be elevated and see out across the landscape a little bit. And we sat there and watched turkeys fly up at dark. And through my binoculars, just looking out across there, it was like somebody put black trash garbage bags up in the tops of these trees all out there. It was nuts. Because you're looking out across there, and it's just like a steady, mat of these little stumpy live oaks and stuff like that. And up in the top of them, it's like I said, somebody blew up these black garbage bags and stuck them all on the tops of the trees.
Yeah, sometimes they ain't but 10 foot off the ground. That's what's crazy.
Oh yeah.
Some places have really a struggle for a roost tree, for them to get in. They always say.
Well,
they always say if you got roost trees and water, you'll have turkeys in Texas.
How many different areas of Texas have you hunted, Bruce?
I've hunted the very north, next to Oklahoma. I've hunted west, way out to West Texas where we go. I really haven't hunted brush country. I went out there one time, and that was it. But in East Texas, I've tried to kill the eastern over there too. But, it's all different terrain. Some flat, some got hills like in the hill country, and They're not like Rock Springs. It's a little hilly, but a lot of rocks and stuff. They survive. They something.
Do you? I mean, is there a notable difference in the style of hunting other than the terrain, or are the Texas Rios kind of the same across the board, or what?
Yeah, they're pretty much the same. I noticed they like a high pitch call, like a crystal or a high pitch box, or even a high pitch mouth call. It seems to cut the wind out there when it's windy, and they just seem to like a higher pitch call. I find high raspy call, and then you can blow like a coyote call to make them gobble, in the morning or evenings and stuff like that. But you got to be aggressive.
I guess in that same regard, a question for both of you, with your, what, as opposed to, let's just say, a typical Eastern hunt, what are you looking for? What's your strategy? How does it change when you're in Texas hunting Rios?
Man, I tell you what, I'll use the place that I hunted this last weekend, for example. It was our second year to hunt it, but basically there were 2 tanks on the property, 2 places that held water. And they had little dry creeks kind of draining out of them. And really that was the only place for the birds to roost. And so, and the guy had turkeys. I mean, he that's the whole reason he invited us, because he was tired of them eating their protein and corn out of their deer feeders. And anyway, that's kind of my first thing was, as soon as I get there, let's find the water. Let's find where that water is, and also not only look at that, but see what's the closest water besides that. So most of the time they're going to be at the same roost day in and day out. If they don't have water close by elsewhere, to roost, or another roosting spot to roost. So yeah, that's my main thing. Find where they roost, and then work from there.
Well, Bruce, so I think we can all agree on a lot of those principles, but I guess for you, as far as setting up on a bird, what you've experienced, in terms of how they act and their behavior, how does that differ from an Eastern hunt?
Well, first of all, I would recommend bringing some kind of chair to sit in out there, because everything's sticky or prickly or something. So, we sit on the ground here hunting Easterns or Marions or something like that. But Texas, you better bring you a chair to sit in, because if not, you're going to be picking stuff out your behind. That's the first thing I could recommend. I like to get as close as I can to them on the roost, within 100 yards or so, depending on the territory. And then once they hit the ground, I call a lot to them. I keep them gobbling, keep them fired up, because there's so many hens to pull them from you. You keep their mind on you, and just keep calling, and till they come in, till you can see them. Once I see them, I kind of shut up and then let them do their thing. But I call aggressive.
Yeah, I know that you and I hunting together out there, it took me a while to figure that out, because so many times what I would do at home, I try to do that, and the next thing I know, the bird's 200 yards away. Because I'm thinking, all right, I need to be quiet and let him make his way over here, and then it's like they lose. It's like you said, you lose their attention. They forget about you or whatever. Right.
And I agree with Jordan too. Water, I find when they hit the ground, they looking for water, and then next they go and buy a feeder somewhere, on their way on their daily route. So, the ground out there, you can see a lot of tracks, a lot of strut marks and stuff. Set up on the road where you can see a long ways, and work them like that.
We've mentioned this already, but a big flock of turkeys is aesthetically pleasing. In other words, it's fun, and they gobble a lot. But I've noticed that the hens in Texas are more vocal. Do y'all agree with that?
Yes.
Yep.
I've noticed that a lot of times it's a common practice. I've heard a lot of people say this. They identify that boss hen, and they kind of challenge her, and they mimic her and stuff like that, and they get her to come, and she brings the gobbler with her, and talking about Eastern birds. And yeah, that that works. I've done that. I can attest to that too. But in Texas, I have actually been in situations in Texas where I started doing that, and I created an absolute I don't know what to call it, but there's so much turkey talk going on that you almost feel like what good am I going to do? I actually told Travis was hunting with me on one of those hunts we made, and he's filming, and he's like, "Hey, man, don't you think you need to call?" And I'm like, "What difference is it going to make? Like, how are they going to know the difference between me and these 40 hens that are yelping? It's nuts."
Yeah, that kind of goes back to what Bruce was saying. You know, you get as close as you can to that tree he's in. And I had it happen this last weekend. I mean, I got in there, and I happened to be right under the boss hen's tree, and you could hear her loud and clear over everybody else. And anyway, but the gobbler, he never gobbled on the limb. He flew down. He strutted out there for 20 minutes. We called to him, and the hen just, firing back up. But he flew about 10 feet over my head. The only thing that kept him from dying was the camera couldn't quite get on him. So
I know, I was spoiled. I know I was spoiled because, again, this was a trip that Bruce was on, and we weren't hunting together. We actually went with two different guys that had the property. And the first morning I ever hunted in Texas, we drove over, and we got there like midnight. It was late, and we get up the next morning, and the guys that were taking turkey hunting, they invited us to come out because they wanted the turkey. We got a lot of turkeys. We've never really turkey hunted. We want y'all to come out and hunt with us and, show us what this is all about and take us hunting. So Bruce goes with one of the guys, and I go with another one, and Travis is there with us with a camera, and they go drop us off, and they go walk to the second gate and go through that gate and take a right and go down the road that walks the fence. And, go down there a little ways, and there's like an old creek bed, and we see a lot of turkeys there. That's how it started. So it's pitch black dark. I'm talking about, like, can't see your boots dark. And we start walking. And we're walking down, like, one side, like the west side or the east side of the property. And there's a fence on our left that is the property line. And there's, these sections of fence every so often. And so we walk and we walk and we walk in the dark, and we finally get to the first fence. And I'm thinking to myself, my God, where is the second fence going to be? Because we've walked a long ways. And the guy who's with us he's never turkey hunted before. So he's just kind of like, yeah, y'all just tell me what to do, And as we got close to the fence, it was one of those deals where, sometimes when you're walking through the woods, you know that you're hearing a turkey gobble, but it's far enough away that you're kind of like, I'm not going to say anything because it's not clear. So that's happening. And me and Travis are walking along, and we get to the fence, and Mr. Gary goes to open the fence, and the turkey gobbles a couple of times, and there's no doubt. You can't avoid it. He's within 300 or 400 yards of us. And it is so dark, I can't even see Travis's face, and this turkey is just coming unglued, just gobbling his brains out. And I'm like, I say something to him, I'm like, hey, and I'm not crazy, that's a turkey, right? And he's like, yeah, that's a turkey, for sure. And so we asked Mr. Gary, we're like, hey, can we just go down this road right here? Do we have to walk to the next gate? Because I'm like, let's just go to him. It's dark enough, we can get right on him, And Bruce had said, get as close as you can. So I'm thinking, all right, well, this is perfect because it's so dark, we can get right up underneath him. And he's like, sure, we're a long way from everybody else. We can go here. It doesn't matter. So we take a right and we start walking. And I swear, it's like no matter how far we walk, the turkey still sounds like he's the same distance. I swear the sound carries in the dark out there anyway. The sound carries forever. And we keep walking. We walk 100 yards and stop, and he gobbles, and he's the same distance. Walk 100 yards, he gobbles, he sounds like he's the same distance. I'm like, God, we're never going to get to this turkey. Long story short, we finally get down there a ways, and we finally get up on the turkey. And he's been gobbling for 20 minutes now in the pitch black dark. And we get, within like 100 yards of him, and it's dark. I've never been there. I've never hunted any of this landscape ever, so I'm just trying to like make my best guess. So we set up in this little oak mott, and the turkey's gobbling, and by the time we got sat down, there were 38 turkeys gobbling. That I am pretty sure within hearing distance I could count 38 different turkeys. I know it's hard to imagine that, and it's hard for me to say that for sure because at what point do you lose count when there's that many turkeys gobbling, right? So there's turkeys gobbling all around us. And so I do my normal thing. I get my calls ready, and it starts breaking daylight, and we got a decoy out there, and I start yelping. Well, that was just, I almost want to say that was the wrong thing to do, because when I started yelping, there had to be 100 hens within 100 yards of me. It sounded like I was in the, what do you call the bird thing at the zoo? The
atrium.
Atrium. Yeah, it sounded like I was in an atrium. It was just between the gobbles and the hen talk, and all of it within, like I said, within 100 yards, maybe a couple hundred yards in every direction. We were surrounded. And I sat there and I tried to call, and I couldn't. Like, if I called, every hen just cut me off. Just and there's turkeys gobbling in every direction, and they're everywhere from 75 yards to 300 yards, 500 yards. And I finally just set my call down. That's what I was referring to earlier. And Travis was like, well, don't you need to call to him? I'm like, what good is that going to do? I can't even hear myself call. And then, long story short, a turkey came. I mean, as soon as they flew down, a gobbler came straight to us. But he came up behind us. And one of us was kind of sticking out of one side of the mott. And he kind of hung up and couldn't get a gun over there to him before he walked off. But anyway, that's been my experience. It's fun, and there's lots of turkeys, and it keeps you going all day long. But the hen thing is, if you're frustrated by henned-up turkeys in the South, Texas is 1,000 times worse, in my experience.
Yep.
Oh yeah, that's what I told the guy that we were hunting with up there. The guy that invited us. I said, "Man, you got a lot of hens."
Yeah.
He said, "Oh, I don't know the difference." He didn't know the difference. He just said, "There's too many turkeys out here."
Yeah.
It's always good when they start sitting. It's good. It's good when you call and they got 15 strutting gobblers coming at you too. That's a lot of fun. So Texas is fun, man. It really is. It'll humble you when you come back to Louisiana. I promise you.
That's right.
While we got you for a few minutes, one of the best stories that I know of in Texas, other than Mikey's ostrich story, because and if you haven't heard that, you have to go back and listen to episode 6, I think it was, where we had Mikey Miller, the turkey killer, telling the story of getting attacked by an ostrich hunting on a farm in Texas. You got to go listen to that. But Bruce has got a pretty good one. If y'all don't know what a Great Pyrenees dog is, they're those humongous, fluffy white dogs that guard livestock.
Yes.
And we were out there hunting, and the guy's like, all right, so the Pyrenees lives in this fence with these goats. And he's not a house dog, he just lives with the goats. But there was this really big turkey in there. I'm going to let you tell the story, Bruce, because it's pretty good.
Talking about the one with Trigger?
Yeah. Well, no, the one with you and, I don't know, who Travis was videoing, and the dog come up on y'all.
Yeah. Well, we was hunting in a spot we like to go, and they have goats in this pasture, and like you said, they have these dogs that live with them. They raise with them, and they guard them from predators and stuff. They're a big animal. They're a big dog. And the guy I was with was really scared. The dog, when you go sit down and get ready to call a turkey rather or whatever, the dog would be out there watching you, keeping your eye on you. And then, the sheep or the goats or whatever start feeding toward you, he's guarding them, and he'll come up and growl at you, and he was wanting to climb the tree on us, I was like, man, that dog ain't gonna bother us, So I actually got up and ran the dog off. He's like, man, I'd have never done that. I was about to climb this tree. But anyway, it's crazy, man. Grown man scared of a dog, but anyway.
Didn't y'all have a hunt, though, one time, maybe a couple years ago before Trigger came with us, when you and Travis had a turkey, and the goat showed up while the turkey was, like, trying to get the turkey in front of the camera or something?
Yeah.
And the dog come running up there, and the turkey's pitched up, and the wind blew him or something?
That's right. The dog and the goat scared the turkey. They all pitched up, and the wind was blowing so hard that day, and they was instantly, like, 100 yards from us that quick when it hit the wind, man. It was unreal. But, yeah, it's crazy, man.
But as opposed to Mikey's story, we didn't shoot the farmer's dog.
No, we didn't shoot the dog.
Mikey shot the farmer's ostrich, but it was going to kill him if he didn't, so he got a pass.
I hunted with Mike a couple years ago, and one afternoon we was walking trying to get a turkey to gobble, and we came up on a bunch of morel mushrooms, and the hunt was over. We picked mushrooms the rest of the afternoon, and I was thinking, man, I want a turkey hunt, but then when we got back to the camp, he fried them things up. My God, they was good, So I understand why the hunt was over now, but yeah, it was good.
Yeah,
the only thing that I've ever seen, Mikey he'll stop a hunt for mushrooms or to fish or something like that. But one time we were in Florida and we had a bird goblin going nuts, and we were headed over there, and Mikey almost stepped on about a 6.5 foot, 7 foot rattlesnake.
Mm-hmm.
We stopped, of course, and we were sitting there looking at it, and then Mikey's kind of playing with it for the camera and all that kind of stuff, and then he just starts walking off and leaving the rattlesnake. And I said, "Man, you're not going to shoot that thing?" He said, "No, we got turkeys gobbling. We got to get to them."
Mm-hmm.
Golly, dude.
Bruce did something like that to me in North Mississippi. You remember what I'm about to tell?
I don't know. I'm always playing a joke on you.
No, this wasn't a joke. We were in North Mississippi. On some of my family that lives up there had gotten us permission to hunt this place, and it was all cattle pastures with like fence rows through it, wooded fence rows. And we go up there in the middle of the day, and they're like, "Yeah, you can go over there and see if you find a turkey." So we slipping through there, and there's a turkey goblin, and he's over in another pasture. So we go to cut through this fence row, and Bruce steps over the fence, and he's slipping. You know, we're trying to get up there and set up, and he steps over the fence, and I'm kind of watching him, and I'm scared to death of snakes, like terrified. And I go to step over the fence and realize that he's just stepped over a copperhead that's laying right there, like basically where you step over the fence. And so I freeze, and I'm like, I'm all shook up. I can't move. I'm like, what? And he turns around, and he's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Dude, there's a freaking copperhead right there. You just almost stepped on him." And he's like, "Damn, turkey's gobbling." And I'm like, "Well, what do you want me to do?" And Bruce turns around, and we're just like, I'm talking about like Spartacus. Walks over there, stomps on the snake's head, reaches in his pocket, pulls out a knife, cuts its head off, and goes, "Come on, the dang turkey's gobbling." Like all in one motion. And I'm like, standing there like, I turned and looked at the guy that was with me. I'm like, did that just happen?
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, well, you don't get in the way of a turkey hunter with gobbling turkey, I guess. A snake will stop me. But,
not me.
But yeah. Well, we appreciate you jumping on and talking a little Texas. So, just in closing, you're a call maker. T3calls.com is where you can check out Bruce's stuff. And like he mentioned, you recommend higher pitches for guys that are going out and hunting Rios?
Definitely. I would definitely bring a higher pitch box or a crystal pot call or something like that. That's going to carry a long ways, because sometimes it gets pretty windy out there, and you need something to cut that wind. So that's
good stuff. Well, you can check out Bruce's stuff at t3calls.com, and again, we appreciate you jumping on, and we'll talk to you soon, buddy.
Y'all have a good evening. Thanks. Bye.
All right. Well, again, thanks to Bruce, and glad he jumped on and shared a little bit of his experience. He's hunted Texas a lot, killed a lot of Rios, so good stuff. And but I want to hear more about your hunt last weekend. I know you finally got on the board and killed one. It was a Rio, but you finally got a bird killed. I want to hear the story.
Man, I tell you what. Talked about it a little earlier. They were still real in their early phases of just starting to work on the pecking order down there, and still pretty grouped up. Few boss gobblers, had some hens and whatnot, but anyway, like we said, we had a couple spots on this property that were tanks, and so we really had 2 roost spots to work with. It wasn't a very big property. I think it was right at 1,000 acres, which I know I sound like I'm complaining. It just, for the amount of birds that it held, it wasn't real big, and we had a lot of people. We had like 4 or 5 of us hunting. So anyway, we were actually guiding. My friend who invited us had invited a lady that had never killed a turkey before, and she's a big hunter and all that. And so he asked us if we wouldn't mind guiding her. So me and my buddies all took her out, and she ended up missing one with me, and then she ended up getting a double with one of my other buddies. So that was really good. But my hunt, it was the second to last day. I think it was an afternoon. That morning they were going crazy, and we actually got right up underneath the tree. Gobbler flew down, kind of did his thing, and the guy that was filming me, my buddy Jacob, he was trying to get a high-speed kill, a good slow-motion kill. That's what he wanted. And so, because we've never done it, but we were trying to get that. And anyway, it wasn't quite light enough, so we couldn't get really the camera, everything set just right to capture this kill shot. And man, I sat there with my bead on him, and I was just waiting till I heard okay. I mean, called him in to about 30 yards, and he's just sitting there strutting. Whole head is bleach white. I mean, he is in love. And he never did gobble, though. But he was out there strutting. You could hear him spitting and drumming and everything, and ended up having to just let him walk off because we couldn't quite get the camera on him. And that really sucked. And I was kind of frustrated that day. We ended up making a big loop on that gobbler and ended up running into 3 more gobblers. And then they hopped the fence and went to the neighbors. And we sat and watched them over there for 45 minutes, chasing each other around. And anyways, pretty much by 10 o'clock, it was over out there, just because it got so hot and they just weren't gobbling. I mean, usual Texas, I can stay out pretty much all day, ride the property, get out and strike something up at some point during the day. And we would hunt all day, nothing. And so we kind of figured out on the last evening, we said, you know what, we just all need to split up, go to some different areas and just kind of sit and camp out and wait till you hear them get fired up. So I did. I went to the little corner of this property and did just that. I just kind of sat and did everything I hate doing about turkey hunting. I don't like to deer hunt them, but I kind of was forced at that. And anyway, I call her once in a while, nothing. Fell asleep, woke up sweating because it's so hot. I mean, just pretty much miserable. And I was trying to have a good attitude about it. And it just, when they're not gobbling, man, that'll frustrate you, especially in Texas when you got these very vocal Rios. And I think about 5:30, I finally heard one go off by himself. So I made a little move on him, got around, called to him once. He gobbled again, said, gotcha. Then I heard all the hens start going, and I saw all the hens. And anyway, he kind of stayed locked up with them, and I was in a bind where I couldn't move any closer to him, and he wasn't leaving the hens. And kind of like we talked about with Mikey a while ago, I popped that fan out, and I just started crawling towards him. And he saw that fan, and he just started marching right towards me, and basically wanting to, defend his little harem. And anyway, I ended up getting a shot off, and man, I was super thankful for it. I had to self-film it all because I didn't have anybody with me because we all split up. But anyway, I was really kind of speechless because I don't know that I'd ever worked that hard for a Texas turkey.
Yeah, well, that's early season everywhere you go. We talked about that just in length, but I guess the storybook turkey hunt that everybody dreams of, where you find the bird gobbling well before daylight and you're able to get a really good setup because you can move around in the dark, and that bird pitches down close to you and he works his way straight to you, and you go home and eat breakfast before the sun's all the way up. That, those hunts are few and far between, and they're very few and far between in early season. And it doesn't matter if you're hunting where there's lots and lots of turkeys, or if you're hunting a small piece of property where you're only hunting a couple of adult birds. It's just, it's hard to beat the real thing. As good as you are as a caller, as good as you are in the woods, it's hard to beat the real thing. So that, I guess you learn that even though you're in Texas where they're running around everywhere, you still got to work for it. And I can attest to what you're saying. I've sat out there. I've kind of gone to Texas. I've never gone the same weekend or the same time of the year. Like one year we went, it was like the opening weekend, and one year we went, it was late, like the second to like the first weekend of May, and then a couple years we went right like second, third week, and it's always different. And one of those years we went, we hit it just right. I mean, it was just right. There were hens but they were leaving the gobblers early, and the gobblers were out searching and gobbling all day, and that was just knockdown, drag out from daylight to dark. I mean, you had to make yourself quit hunting. You know,
That's right.
I mean, it was just you everywhere you stopped and called, a turkey gobbled somewhere. You know,
That's why Texas gives you 4 tags, is for days like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we filled them all that year. We did good that year, but I was fortunate enough myself to get a bird. Well, I called up a bird. One of my family members actually shot, but we in Mississippi last weekend. I went up to some family property in northern Mississippi, and it was tough, man. I know we talked about it, and I experienced basically the same thing that we experienced in Alabama, and the same thing we've been all been experiencing everywhere we've been so far early this year. I got up there on Thursday afternoon last week, and it was absolutely a perfect day. Like, I mean, when I say that the good Lord made days to turkey hunt, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday at last week in North Mississippi, you could not ask. I mean, it was 70 degrees, high 60s, low 70s, just enough breeze to keep you cool and comfortable, but you could hear it wasn't windy you wouldn't call it windy at all. And everything was just starting to green, and I'm thinking, we are fixing to just let them have it. You know, we're fixing to be in turkeys daylight to dark. And I got up there about 3 o'clock Thursday afternoon, and we moved around on our place, couldn't get a bird to gobble. It was just dead, you know. Beautiful, beautiful weather, all the songbirds singing, but no turkeys gobbling. And we set up in a big pasture that we could see a long way, stuck a decoy out there. So we're just going to sit here till dark. And either a turkey's going to come through this pasture, or one's going to fire up and start gobbling, or worst case scenario, maybe we'll hear one on the roost and we'll know where to start in the morning. And we sat there about 30 minutes. It was getting, hour till roost time. And I looked across the field. I didn't look across the field. Actually, my uncle turned and looked at me. He said, "You see that red spot over there through that? There's kind of some CRP type stuff growing on the edge of the field." And it was way over there, like 300 yards. And he's like, "You see that red spot over there?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And it looked like red flagging or something hanging in the bushes at that distance. And he said, "I've been looking at it, and I swear I think it's moving." I threw my binoculars up, and it's a gobbler standing on the edge of the field, red head, shining in the sunshine, like 300 yards away, just with his neck craned up above that stuff looking at us. I've been calling every now and then. He never gobbled, and he stood over there for like 30 minutes in one spot, just stood there. And we were in the edge of the woods on the other side of the field. And he was just standing there looking at our decoy, I guess. I don't know. He just stood there and stood there and stood there, never gobbled, never strutted, nothing. Just stood there. After about, like I said, it was at least 20 minutes. He started walking, and he's kind of coming towards us, but angling to the left. And I called at him a few times, and he stopped and kind of half blew up and strut. Stand there and look for a minute and start walking again. And he walked all the way across that field, probably 300 or 400 yards, and went into the woods about 150 yards or so to our left. And I couldn't do nothing with him. No hens around. He never gobbled. And I'd call, he would recognize it, he would stop and look and kind of, like I said, kind of half blow up, but never really strut. And he went in the woods, and I said, well, I really don't know what to make of that, He didn't see us. He never acted like he was spooked. So we went, I knew he wasn't going far. It was 30 minutes at the most until he would fly up. And we sat there, and I didn't hear him fly up, and he never gobbled. But I kind of had a feeling he was going to be in that patch of woods that was off to the left of where we were sitting. I'm thinking he's going to be there. And sure enough, the next morning, he's in there gobbling his head off. And he's the only bird we heard gobble like that all weekend.
Oh, wow.
And, I guess the thing to say or the thing to report about it was how we killed him. So it started breaking daylight. He starts gobbling. I know it's him because he's 150 yards from where he went in the woods right there, So we ease up there and go in the woods, and we get pretty close to him, and he's still in the tree. We sit down, call, the typical. And he flies down, and it's like he pitched down right there where he was roosted and gobbled back and forth on a ridge out in front of us, just gobbling, gobbling, gobbling. He finally kind of went the other way gobbling on the other side of the ridge, and so we got up, slipped up closer to him, got within maybe 75 yards of him, sat back down, and got him really going, and he gobbled, just gobbled his brains out. And I finally called him up, and what did it was I started kikiing at him. I was just out of ideas, I had gobbled at him, which I don't like to do, but in this case, I've been on the bird for over an hour, and I can all but see him strutting on the other side of this little ridge. I mean, he's within 50 yards of us, so I can't really see him, but I can hear him strutting, and he'll move away from us 100 yards and then come back, move away and come back. And I had done everything. I just started kikiing, and I kikied a bunch, and that sucker broke and came right to me and stood right behind a bush at 30 yards and gobbled at me. Like, when I saw him, I quit calling. He made his way down the ridge towards me. If he'd have took 3 steps to the right, he was dead. And he stood there and gobbled, like stood on the end of that ridge gobbling, trying to find whatever he was hearing, And he stood there, and finally walked off to the left, back over the ridge. And I'm like, man, you got to be kidding me. At this point, I just put the camera down. I'm like, look, talking to my uncle, I'm like, look, I'm fixing to kill this turkey. Like, he's gotten the best of me. He's going to die. I go full Mikey Miller on him, So I said, you just stay right here. So I put the camera down, and I gear up, I get ready, and I start crawling. And I don't have a fan. So I crawl up the ridge, and I get up on top of the ridge. I look, and I can see him, and he's strutting about 80 yards. I call to him. He gobbles, and he kind of flanks me to the right, and I crawl up behind a tree, and we play this game for about an hour, and he won't come in gun range. He goes left, I go left, then he goes right. I go right, then he goes left, and it just, I can't get him in gun range. And he finally goes away from me, stops gobbling, just gives up and starts going. And I followed him a little bit, and the last time I heard him, he was like 200 or 300 yards down a big block of timber and gobbled one time. I said, shit, he's gone, And so I go back, and I said, well, I don't really know what to do here, but let's just make a big circle and get around on the other side of this big block of woods. And we just knew from past experience, they always kind of seemed to go that way. And that's the direction he was heading the last time I seen him and heard him. So we went over there. I said, we're just going to get on that big, this big, pretty ridge in the middle of these woods, the direction he typically heads, and we're going to sit there, call to him a little bit, see if we can get him going again, see if we can kill him, So we go down in there. We get set up on this ridge, and I called a few times, nothing. Wait a few minutes, call a few times, nothing. I'm like, man, here we go. Early season, they're done. They're done for the day, right? And I just basically given up. So I lean back against a tree. I got the camera. I'm filming him. I got the camera set up. And lean back against a tree, close my eyes. I'm just sitting there thinking, kind of like I'm going to take a little nap. Maybe something gobble, wake me up or whatever. And no sooner than I kind of got comfortable, I hear a turkey clucking. And I'm like, I don't even move. I'm like, that's close to me, really close to me. And I thought maybe it was a hen or something. Just walking through the woods clucking, just put, like a curious cluck. So I look around behind me, and there's a turkey standing 20 yards behind me, and it's a gobbler, 20 yards behind me, walking back and forth, left and right, clucking. And I get my uncle's attention. I'm like, hey, there's a turkey behind us, And so he kind of like tries to like slowly start getting his gun in his lap and kind of covering up his face, and because we were just sitting there, and I'm kind of like, don't move, and he's right there. And as I'm turning around looking, he kind of gets my attention, and he points, and there's 2 big turkeys, like they look like 3-year-olds. I mean, big turkeys, 50 yards in front of us, and they're like 25 yards behind the decoy. And they're looking at us, and I guess they've seen me moving, him moving, whatever. They never gobbled. And again, I was kikiing. After we sat down, before I kind of leaned my head back, I did a whole bunch of kikis. And all these turkeys came to it. And the best thing I can figure is when those 2 turkeys walked up on that ridge, they bumped the turkey that was behind us, which was the turkey we were on all morning. and he went down to our left. I guess that's the last place I heard him clucking. He just walked off clucking, and I guess he didn't come because those other turkeys come up. Well, they kind of seen us, and they didn't really spook. They just kind of left off the end of the ridge that they were on and walked away. And I kind of threw my head back. I'm like, crap, man. I can't win for losing. The woods are wide open. There's no green. These turkeys won't gobble, so I don't know that there's a turkey right in front of me, and here I am moving around, and I'm frustrated, And so I just kind of sat back for a minute, and I waited a minute, and picked my call up, and I did a kiki sequence, and he gobbled 100 yards to our left. And before I could get my face mask on, I could see him coming up the hill to us, and he came straight to us. I'm talking about on a dead strut run. I mean, he was strutting and running. And he come up this little finger ridge, come up 15 yards in front of us, and won the prize for the day.
There you go.
So I just found that interesting, I guess, something. It's just...
Yeah, that's awesome.
I've had turkeys respond like that to kikis before, but it was so predominant that weekend. For whatever reason, we didn't see any hens. All these turkeys were by themselves. They weren't roosted with hens. And, I have my own theories, but, why are these turkeys all responding to these flock calls like that? I'm talking about on a string coming right to us.
Crazy.
Just kind of weird. And then Saturday, that was Friday morning. Saturday, we go back in there, see if we can get on these two birds that we had called up, and there was some turkeys gobbling. Maybe it was them. I don't know. It was in that area. And we were on the border of some public land, and we got set up, and I'm trying to work on them. They're not gobbling very good, and I'm not very confident. And we're as close as we can get in the wide open woods. And I waited a minute, and then I heard another hunter come in off of the government property, and he's just wearing his box call out, just yeah, just over and over and over and over, and I'm like, he's making his way over here towards us because he's heard the turkeys gobbling, and they've been shut up for probably 30 minutes now. So I decided to get up and walk down to the end of the ridge. I'm just going to get my decoy, and we're going to leave and go to the other side of the place and just let this guy have it because I didn't feel like we were on anything, really. I walked to the end of the ridge, and I said, you know what, while I'm down here, I'm going to get my call out and call out across this bottom because that's where they were, and just see if they're still down in there, maybe I can shock one or something, So I called a few times. I didn't hear anything, and I said, before I leave them with kiki, because that's been working, right? So I did a few kikis, and I heard a turkey answer me, a hen, or a turkey answer me, just a yelp. And I listened to it and did it a few more times, and I thought, man, there's another hunter coming from the other direction. I'm like, man, how many people are trying to come in this area, And I'm just standing there in the wide open, on the end of this ridge, and I keep looking down there, and I keep hearing it. It's getting closer, and I'm expecting to see a person any minute, I'm just being completely casual about it. And I look, and I see a hen running through this bottom, running towards me in a full dead sprint, hopping over logs, and I'm like, oh crap, So I just kind of hit the ground and barrel roll over behind this big tree and kind of tuck in beside it as close as I can. And this hen, you can hear her, she is constant. She starts kikiing and yelping, and and like I said, she didn't sound good at all, which is a testament to the whole how good can you call. I was convinced it was a person that wasn't really good on a mouth call, truthfully. And I don't mean that derogatory at all. I heard it. It sounded like somebody that wasn't really good on a mouth call. It sounded like a goose. It really did. It was a don't, just a deep, cadence was off, everything. And she was running to me, and when she got closer to me, she started kikiing. And she beep, 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 and it ended up being two hens, and I'm thinking, well, maybe there's a gobbler with them, And they suckers run up the ridge, and they run up within 5 steps of me. They're on the back side of the tree I'm huddled up against, 5 steps from me. And they are just hammering it. Just kikiing and yelping as loud as they can. Just on and on and on, and I'm just like looking behind them, hoping a gobbler come slipping up the ridge. And they did that for a few minutes, and then both of them flew straight up in a tree above me. Never seen me or anything. They flew straight up in a tree within 50 yards of me, sat up in the tree, kikiing and yelping for a few minutes, looking around, and then both pitched right back down to the bottom where they come from. So,
Wow.
It's an interesting story, Jordan, but I don't even know what to make of it. Like
Yeah, that's crazy.
It's just one of those things where you learn something in the turkey woods, you experience something, you try to make something out of it, try to figure out what it means. All I know is that's the first year of, I don't know, a bunch, 15 plus years of me going up there first couple weeks of the season in Mississippi. It's the first year I've ever went up there and it not been henned up turkeys. You know, I'm always hunting henned up turkeys. And this year, I didn't hear a bunch of turkeys, but none of them were henned up, and they all came to a kiki. So, in terms of an informative podcast, I don't know what to make of it, but I find it to be kind of interesting. You know,
Roundabout saying, what does it mean?
I mean, if you're trying to strategize on what's going on in the woods, what should your approach be? It's different everywhere you go. I'm just giving you what I've experienced, and it kind of got me baffled. Honestly, I didn't know what to make of it, but we did get to get a bird. That made the trip worth it. So
That's right.
Well, I guess we're going to see what happens here in Louisiana. You and I both going to be doing the youth hunt, so I wish you good luck. I hope that y'all are able to get one of those birds. Maybe you get that Rio-looking bird.
We'll see.
We got a good weather forecast planned, forecasted this weekend across the South. So we're going to wrap up the podcast here, and I'm going to have his name is Kevin Vela he's from California, and he is the district biologist for California and Nevada. And the California season opens on Saturday, I think, either Friday or Saturday. So I'm going to talk with him on the podcast this weekend for next week. And for some of you people that have reached out and asked me about some other regions, stuff like that, we're going to get some deep Western or far Western turkey talking about California. You ever hunted California, Jordan?
No, I'd love to, though.
Yeah, we talked about that with that guy that sent the questions when we were on with Mikey. None of us have ever, or me and Jordan haven't hunted California, but maybe one day. But
one day.
We're going to talk to Kevin, and like I said, he's the district biologist, and I think he's really involved in the NWTF out there in California, so we're going to talk about that. And for all you guys that are going to be out in the woods, y'all hunt safe. Interact with us again on STRUTCAST.com, on our Facebook and Instagram. Let us know how your hunting's going. Let us know what you want to hear. We really appreciate you following us and helping make this podcast successful. We can't say thank you enough. And always, we want to say that we encourage all of you to keep all of our law enforcement officers, our legislation, lawmakers, and everyone who has a hand in making decisions to preserve our hunting heritage. Say a prayer for those guys. Pray for discernment and sound decision making, and so we can enjoy and keep doing this year after year. So thanks again for being on, Jordan, and I wish you good hunting this weekend, and we will talk to y'all next week.
Appreciate it, pal.